Hey friends, welcome back to the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we have a review of something that NZXT showed off at Computex. It's their H510 Elite. So we're gonna be going over this thing, giving a little bit of a review and letting you know how it is after I tell you about today's video sponsor, FreshBooks. In case you haven't heard of them, my friends, FreshBooks is the cloud-based accounting and invoicing software that makes your job a lot easier, from filing expense reports to making sure that you're getting paid on time up to 2 times faster, and including read receipts on submissions of invoices. You can make sure that everything in your business is running smoothly and that you're working on your business, not in your business. So you can go to freshbooks.com/UFD Tech and enter UFD Tech in the How Did You Hear About Us section to try it for free for 30 days, risk-free, no credit card required. Again, that's freshbooks.com/UFD Tech and enter UFD Tech in the How Did You Hear About Us section. So as a lot of you can probably note, the H510 looks a lot like NZXT's predecessors, with one key upgrade, which is this gorgeous front tempered glass panel that shows off the 2 included Air RGB fans, both of which are 140 millimeters. It helps to give the H510 a completely different look from other things that NZXT has on offer, but then also in this price region of about $150, the H510 Elite stands out with this RGB panel. It is $150 retail. However, due to the recent trade war stuff, they're looking to MSRP this one at $170 in the US because of just, embargo, or just because of, tariffs and whatnot. The H510 is definitely a smaller mid-tower case. It actually is quite comparable to a larger micro ATX case. So it's not something that's gonna be obstructive and intrusive in your setup, but it does look really good. It can fit up to a full ATX. It has the ever popular cable routing cover to make sure that you can run your cables without them being really visible on the front section. And then on the back, they also have their patented cable routing stuff that's back there. It's a little too thin for my taste, and it makes it really difficult for mounting like custom sleeved cables, especially if they're in a cable comb and you have them as a brick. It's really difficult to route them through that. But if you have more like standard cable routing like we do in this case, it can totally work for you. Then on top of the 2 included 140 millimeter RGB fans, they also include a 120 fan at the back, and then there's also room for one more fan at the top as an exhaust, and you can do that as a 120 or a 140, so slot for 4 fans. But the front section here that holds the 2 RGB fans actually has a really decent setup for mounting these fans. Let's say if you want to put a 240 or 280 millimeter radiator here, it's actually just as easy as removing 2 thumb screws and those fans come off. It's a radiator support bracket and it works really well in this implementation. It makes it pretty simple to just swap in and out if that's what you're choosing to do. We just kept it with the stock 140 RGBs, but that's something that NZXT has included that would make your job a lot easier if you're trying to water cool your build. These 2 140 RGB fans are running back to the Smart Device 2 that NZXT also happens to include with the case that can support up to 2 RGB LED channels, up to 4 Hue 2 addressable LED strips, or 5 Air RGB fans. So you have a lot of different options, flexibility with that, and it can also support 3 fan channels up to 10 watts per channel output. Supports PWM, so it can make sure that everything is flowing quite nicely and ramp up with your system. And then obviously it syncs really well with NZXT's CAM software. You can get everything running the way that you want it to. Then as far as breathability for those fans, they include a cutout on the left-hand side of the case, which also has a dust filter on the inside to make sure that it's getting some intake on the side. And then also there's a bottom dust filter for the front fans as well to make sure it's intaking from the left and the underside of the carriage. It also has a power supply fan filter as well. And honestly, in testing, we found that there's sufficient airflow for the configuration that we have in here, which is an 8700K with the 1070 Ti. This setup versus an open air just taking off the front panel actually only led to us getting about 20 megahertz more on the GPU because it was still hitting its 83 degrees Celsius thermal limit on the 1070 Ti, but it didn't really change once we put the tempered glass side panel back on. So the actual configuration of a horizontal GPU worked pretty well. However, my biggest issue with this case is their decision to include vertical GPU mounting. It just hinders this case in so many different ways. Number one, the fact that the vertical GPU mount section is there at all actually blocks you from getting to one of the screws to install your horizontal GPU. So you have to take the vertical riser section off off, and then actually unscrew the horizontal section, screw your GPU in, and then put the vertical riser section back on. It's a pain in the butt from the get-go. Then number two, there's hardly any room under the graphics card once it's vertically mounted for you to actually get a lot of different riser cables in there. You have to have a 90-degree riser cable. If you use one of these, which is just a flexible one that comes from Fantex, there's not enough clearance at the bottom for you to really get this in order to have your GPU mounted. And then number three, the proximity of the vertical GPU to the tempered glass panel makes it so that it gets terrible airflow. Our GPU was hitting 83 degrees Celsius when it was in horizontal mode. When it's in vertical mode, it hits 93 degrees Celsius after it's already thermal downclocked itself to 1600 megahertz. It gets as low as it can possibly go, and then the temperature just spikes up to 93 degrees. We lost significant amount of performance, over 100 megahertz on our GPU by going with a vertical GPU. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for NZXT to include this in this case. It would have just been better if they didn't include it at all. I know vertical GPUs is kind of a thing right now, but honestly, besides the fact that you have to deal with it even if you're going horizontal, and then also the fact that it doesn't fit, there's not a whole lot of clearance under the GPU, and then it's also just bad for thermals, it doesn't make a lot of sense to include it in a case like this. I would have rather they just disincluded it altogether and not even thought about it whatsoever. It might work if you have, let's say, a single slot cooler. You might want to go for some custom water cooling or potentially have a blower style cooler, but for something like this that's an AIB partner card, it's just not really going to work for you. And then as far as horizontal GPU mounting, it actually has plenty of space for most of the large graphics cards you have. I mean, we have this 2070 Super Jetstream. This thing is long, it's thick, and the H510 fit it no problem. You can fit most GPUs that you're gonna possibly find unless it's stupid long. And then a couple of things that I actually do really like about the case. First off is the tempered glass panel on the front. Once you unscrew it, it doesn't fall out. It actually has some push pin. It has like a push pin locking mechanism that makes it work really well so it doesn't fall out once you unscrew it. Then also the rear panel right here. This has one of the best implementations I've seen of actually making sure that you have it secure. It doesn't have little clips that go along the top of the backside. It actually is just at this front section right here. So you clip it in at the front and then you push it on and screw it in. So it's like you don't have to make sure that you're holding the top and bottom and sliding it in the entire time. So it made things a lot easier that way. Also, NZXT labels their screw bags. That's amazing. I love it. It makes sure that you know what screws are what and they go where. You have your own dedicated bag for it. I just love NZXT for that. And then just a quick note, they also include a microphone headphone splitter for the single 3.5mm jack that's on the top. You also have USB Type-C, which is 3.1 Gen 2, and then also a USB 3.0 port up there as well, including the power button, but you do get the headphone splitter for that jack. Overall, I will say at $150 or $170 US, you're gonna be hard pressed to find a case that actually looks like this in that price region. At this price point, you're competing with something like the 570X from Corsair, and I think I really like the steel aesthetic mixed with the tempered glass, not just a straight glass build. NZXT does that really well. This is a really refined looking case. It performs quite adequately, has all of the mounting options that you'd want, two 2.5-inch drives on the backside. You can build a pretty dang good mid-tower system in this case, and then you also have something that looks pretty beautiful. And for the price, you get all of the included RGB strips that you'd want when the fans are like $30 a piece. The case makes a lot of sense in its price point, and NZXT actually does definitely have a winner regardless of the fact that it might have some issues with the vertical GPU mounting. So I would definitely pick one up at this price point, and I think you guys can consider doing that as well. And you know what else you should consider doing? Checking out our sponsor today, FreshBooks. In case you are running a business, you should check them out for invoicing, for expense filing, for cloud-based accounting, everything that you might want to do with your business. You check out FreshBooks for that at freshbooks.com/UFDtech and enter UFDtech in the How'd You Hear About Us section to save 30 days for free. Try it out. You can join the 24 million people who already have. And that's gonna wrap it up of this review of the NZXT H510 Elite. Let me know what you think of this case down below in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the review. Get subscribed to stay up to date on this and the rest of our tech related content. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video.